real happy to have my next guest on the sports card shop at Moco guest line. He's a collector, like most of us that are probably listening to the show, and he's also the CEO of Collectors. I'm real happy to have him on the show, Mr. Nat Turner. Welcome.
Thanks. That was an intense video.
I know that, like I always say too. Then it's all downhill after the video, but I kid. I guess the first question I have is sort of you know you're one of the gentlemen in charge at PSA. Kind of your thoughts pre-acquisition. You were a collector, you're not a new collector, so sort of your thoughts on the company before the acquisition. What did you think of them? What did you have PSA cards? Just sort of pre-acquisition, what your feelings were.
Yeah, I was a big collector of vintage baseball cards before the acquisition, and vintage baseball. I mean, post-war, like 48 through like 75, and PSA is obviously, I would think obviously the preferred grading company for that type of collector who collects that kind of stuff. And so I had a good number of PSA slabs and thought very highly of them in that genre. I'm a huge collector of 90s basketball. For years, I actually still probably have more BGS cards of like Jordan and Kobe and like those guys from the 90s than I do PSA. That's changed a lot as I've bought more cards and tried to cross things over, often unsuccessfully. But I probably have more PSA cards now for the 90s. We've really invested a lot post-acquisition in kind of experts at the company who are kind of like, the world's foremost expert on things like, serial number stamping, correct versus fake, and that kind of thing, which is pretty recent in the last like year, but we've made a lot of headway with it. And so, yeah, I'm not a personal expert on identifying those fakes, but like I said, we've hired a lot of folks. But so pre-acquisition, yeah, I was a big collector of PSA slabs. I wanted them to be faster turnaround times and have more technology like set registry and imaging of the cards that you get graded and that kind of stuff. But yeah.
So let's go in the DeLorean and go back to February 21. The group led by you acquires PSA. Big hobby news, as you well know. My inbox kind of blew up, and and the general consensus or the general thought, was Nat's one of us. He's a collector. He's going to make everything sort of pro collector. And I was on this show, full transparency. I've said, listen, Nat is a collector. I've seen, him post stuff, but he's also, this is also a business and a business move. So we got to keep that in mind. I thought people were just sort of like putting you on like a white horse and you're going to ride in and save the hobby. And I wasn't saying that you don't care about the hobby. I just was trying to remind people there are a lot of different gears in motion here. And stuff doesn't even happen overnight. If you heard some people, you thought like, it was whatever day it was, the next day, all problems would be solved. And so I just kind of said, take a step back and let's see what happens. Kind of, I'm sure you heard all that stuff yourself. Kind of your thoughts in those moments when, this acquisition sort of first took place.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've told a lot of people, like I couldn't afford the company all myself. So we have investors, shareholders. We have a number of employees now who are shareholders. It is a business at the end of the day, just like every other company in card land. So that part I would like to think is pretty obvious. In other words, like sometimes we have to make decisions that, we'd like to invest, for example, we'd like to hire 100 more customer support reps, but, at some point, we can't afford it. And actually that's an example of one area where we just said, screw it, we're going to hire as many as we can. But you know what I mean? Like we, at the end of the day, we have a business to run. that said, it is my number one passion as a person outside of family, I guess. And I personally look at decisions in that way, at the company, meaning it's our number one value, be obsessed with the collector, which means, we make long-term decisions. We're not a public company anymore, so we don't have to worry about quarterly earnings. We have to worry about 10 years from now or 5 years from now what our earnings look like. But we can make decisions that are the right thing for the collector on a longer term basis, which means we can invest more. And that's why we went private, actually. I appreciate everyone's belief and sentiment. I told a lot of folks too, it's going to take time. Nothing happens overnight. This is a 35-year-old, 36-year-old now company that is who it is for a reason, is what it is for a reason. It never changed, rapidly. It evolved with the hobby. It took its time. It was very patient with its standards, stuck to its grounds on certain things. And that's, not something we're going to rip apart, right? We're going to apply our own little, take on it, hire certain people, build more technology, but that stuff takes a lot of time. So, I like to think we've done a lot of good things in the last 18 months. We can talk about that, but, yeah, that's how I view it.
Yeah, and we all know the backlog that was, and
It's over now.
yeah, and I was part of it. I had
Oh, right.
an
Yeah.
order in for 18 months, and now I submitted another order at the national, and I got that back in less than 60 days. So
Yeah.
just a vast difference from where you were to current form. Talk about how that happened. For people who aren't behind closed doors, and they just truthfully they just want their cards back as fast as they can. But there's people who probably should get credit for that. How did that change occur? Talk about some of the wheels in motion there.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, our team, it's easy to cast blame on us, and we deserved a lot of it, right? Like 18 months waiting for your cards is not acceptable in any way, shape, or form, right? But go one level deeper, there's a lot of very hardworking people at the company who we don't like, trust me, like getting those angry emails and phone calls and direct messages is not fun. And, you know, we were not willing to compromise our standards to speed up and just grade things faster or looser just to get them out the door. That would have been the wrong thing to do. So our team really stepped up, and over the last 18 months, so when we bought the company in February of last year, we were grading roughly 22 to 23,000 cards a day, just to give you some numbers. And we were receiving at the time, 50 to 100,000 cards a day. And that was pretty normal, actually, for during COVID, those first few months. It was no big deal. But unfortunately, it started to accelerate, and it actually just got out of control. And it was our fault for not raising prices sooner or shutting down sooner. Those cards just kept piling up, and we created, this backlog. But what happened since that February is we've actually close to tripled that grading capacity. And what a lot of people don't realize is not just the grading capacity. You have to have the capacity of people to open boxes, to receive the cards, count them, sticker them, image them, seal them, assemble them, ship them back to the customers. There's all these steps, research them. There's all these steps that go into it. And grading is probably, the hardest to quickly scale. Like, it's the hardest to scale in general because you have to train, and not everyone can be a grader as far as skill set. So, that was where the bottleneck really was. And we fixed that, but we also had to fix all those other areas. So it took a while. We're on the other side of it. We actually celebrated that moment a couple of weeks ago internally with email, and everyone's getting some swag soon, commemorating it. We never want that to happen again, first and foremost for our customers' sake. But like I said, it was a very frustrating period of time for the company because we couldn't accept a lot of new submissions, and we were failing our customers for that period of time. But yeah, we're on the other side of it. Right now, we're averaging less than 90 days for every service level for PSA, including the bulk special that we launched in July, which is now for TCG and as of yesterday for modern cards. So yeah, other side of it.
Yeah, and I'm glad you talked about that because I think I know just I've been in this hobby just a long long time, so you learn as you go. But I think you always hear, well, just hire more graders, right? That's the simple man's like, hire more graders. And I always say to, like I think you touch on it. Like, I think that's the hardest position to hire for. So I'm not, they're all key in their own roles, but I think if we're ranking as far as the toughest to train and get ready to do the job on your own, as a solo and by yourself, I would, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I would say grade being a grader is probably at the top of that list.
It's yeah, I mean, it's one of the hardest jobs at our company for sure. It's a coveted job too. We have a lot of both internal and external candidates who, that's kind of their career goal is to get in that room. Certainly, takes a certain personality and skill set, card knowledge as well. Um, just to be frankly at the minimum level to qualify, just to be trained and go through our university program we have internally. We have all these tests you can take to see if you can qualify into that program. And it's a big deal. And we have a full-time team. Literally all they do is identify candidates and train those candidates just for grading, all sorts of content around it. So yeah, I mean, it's the hardest thing to scale, but for good reason. That's frankly the secret sauce or the intellectual property of the company to some degree. Not the only thing, but it's probably one of the biggest things. People trust us to have the right opinion and right answer on, is this card real? What card is it? And what grade is it in? And, that's not everyone can answer that question or answer it as accurately as we can as frequently. So, that's why we put a lot of resource behind it.
And potentially for those, maybe someone out there's listening, and hey, someday I'd love to be a grader with PSA. I mean, how long potentially can that process take for someone to go from you know ground level to that day when they can kind of say they are one potentially?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our graders started in a different job at the company, and as I mentioned, kind of applied internally took the test, and then entered the training program. It's a multi-month process. Honestly, you have a mentor in the grading room, a senior grader. Your grades don't count for a while, where you're grading cards and someone else is grading them as well, and we're comparing what you thought versus what they thought. It's kind of like a co-pilot, like when you're training to fly an airplane. You can't fly the plane alone for a while, right? It's the same concept. We track everything, so multiple graders look at every card, so we know fail percentages or grade change percentages by grader, which is important. If someone's grades are being overruled 20% of the time, 10% of the time, like, that's unacceptable. We dig into that. So it's a multi-month process, for sure. It depends on the person, honestly. If you're very used to handling cards and understanding defects and, very precise at measuring centering and all that kind of stuff, it can be faster. And it also depends on what you're grading. We have specific teams grading Pokemon, grading ultra modern, grading vintage, grading 90s cards. Like we have experts in those regions, in those categories that focus, and some of those are harder to grade than others as well, I should mention. So
Yeah, no doubt. I think it's sometimes a fact that's lost on people. Like, if you sub your card, I want someone who knows what they're looking at to look at it, right? Not someone that says, "Hey, what is this, Joe? Come here, tell me what you know." There's an art to it, and I
oh yeah.
think sometimes people forget that. And I'm glad you mentioned that. We've seen some upstarts try to get into the space. Um, AI is sort of what some of them try to hang their hat on. I'm not necessarily against AI, Nat, but I'm sort of old school, right? I think sometimes we try to phase people out with robots and computers and and that sort of thing. I'm sort of, it depends on the day. One day I'm like, if it works, I'm open to. Another days I'm like, I really want that human element. Just now, as the CEO of a company that grades, kind of your thoughts on AI potentially, in the future. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it both?
Yeah, I don't think it's bad. I don't believe that you can do card grading completely automated. I think if you say that, it's either sales material or um, you haven't done the full, like been in the room to see how all these different cards, all the things that could happen. Um, it's the same thing we see in healthcare. Like you think you can automate, you know, reading unstructured data like medical charts and structuring that data. Like it's not possible. I spent 10 years doing that. And it's, but the combination is where it's powerful. And so I believe AI is super valuable to card grading, but in places and with a human guiding it. We talk about tech enabled human grading a lot here, and that's what we're doing. So, we're doing things like, forgetting grading for a second, automatically identifying cards based on prior images. We take images of every raw card front and back 50,000 times a day. That's a database that we've accumulated for, about a year and a half now, that once we see a card once, we shouldn't have to ever identify it again, right? When we see that same card a second, third, fourth, fifth time. However, there are many, many edge cases to cards, as variations and parallels and all sorts of stuff that you'll never replace humans there. And that's not our intention. And that's in research, because you have to be accurate, and AI won't get you 100% the way there. Grading, it won't even get you close to 100%, because two-dimensional images can only go so far. There's a reason graders tilt cards in all different directions under certain lighting to detect creases. People think we're very harsh on grading. The truth is we're very discerning on surface defects, which is usually what people miss. 90s, especially late 80s, hairline creases, scratches on cards. Those are defects, that really hurt a card's grade. And taking a two-dimensional image, by the way, in the original case the person sent it in, which you're not going to take a card out of the case just to take a picture of, you risk damaging the card. There's no way you can detect those surface images using AI. I just don't believe it. And so that's where, we'll always have humans look at, in my opinion, to decipher, surface defects. Can you measure centering of a card with borders using computers? Of course. And, we're going to do that as well. We already are in places. Can you use computers to automatically identify counterfeits? Probably most of the time. If you have a known exemplar image of a fake Mickey Mantle rookie card, sure. Right. But a lot of counterfeits you've never seen before. And it takes a human to say, hey, this looks a little off, or smells different, or the paper's different, or the sheen's different, like that kind of stuff. You don't want to rely on computers entirely. So in our case, it's going to be tech enabled human grading.
Yeah, and I like the human element. I don't ever really want to like sort of like not have that. Like you said, there's just I don't know. It's just maybe I'm old school to
No,
a
you're right.
fault, you know.
AI can help.
But
That's it.
yeah, I think you touch on it, right? The combination of the two can just make the whole process just better overall. But I think to phase one out, or say one, we're not doing one at all over the other. I don't necessarily agree with that. I
It
think
goes
you
both
said
ways.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm glad to hear you say like we're going to use it, but we're not going to like not use that human aspect either. We've seen a lot of people are cheering, right? We're seeing sort of the grading. The prices have come down from prior levels, which is great. Talk about we know about where the backlog was. Are you is there any trepidation that could happen again as prices get lower, or no?
Well, it's always a risk. We're managing it. We're terrified of that happening again. So we're right now, as you probably noticed, like we're doing these monthly specials to kind of gauge where things are, and there's an end. We got absolutely slammed in July with that special. we got slammed this past month with our TCG special as well. Thankfully, it ended yesterday, so we're not, there's no chance of that backlog continuing to accumulate. We're experimenting with price. We're experimenting with specials, just to figure out, what that sweet spot is, where the incoming cards is roughly similar to our capacity. We're closely managing it basically this time around to make sure we don't get over our skis. We'll either raise price or shut service levels down before we let the backlog happen again. So,
all right. I'm sure there's a lot of people clapping in their cars or wherever they're listening to this. All right, I've said it on my show. I'm gonna, having you on. I got to talk. It's now the thing is, it's only happened to me once. I know it's happened to other people other times. I'm not, full disclosure, I'm not a big fan of upcharges. On one hand, it's saying, hey, you got a great card here that's now, valued probably higher than initially thought. But my take has always been like, it's still one card. Maybe it is worth more. It's in great shape, but why? I understand it's going to cost more insurance wise now to ship it back. I get that aspect about it, but that this is probably my biggest bone to pick with PSA is just, and I'm sure a few others feel the same way. Just want to hear your take
yeah.
with upcharges.
Yeah, I actually got mad at PSA about this myself about 8 years ago. Being on the other side, I have come to appreciate the reasoning. The two big reasons. One is we guarantee every card indefinitely in the future at future market value. It's actually a huge risk for us. We pay out well over $1 million a year every year buying back cards. Happens every week. Things that we said were real and turns out they aren't. Things we overgraded. So our fee that we charge, you're not paying an annual fee to PSA to have your card graded, right? We have a one-time chance to basically collect a premium, if you will, on that future guarantee. So that's the biggest reason. And I've seen it, trust me, like I'm the one writing the checks. Like it sucks. We bought back multiple cards this year, over $100,000 each. That, by the way, when I looked back, I looked back at what we charged to grade them, it's $10, $12, people underdeclared the cards. And we unfortunately didn't catch it at the time and paid the price later. So that's reason one. Reason two is the handling. We take these cards out of cases to grade them. Unfortunately, damage sometimes does happen. It's rare, but we need the proper fees applied so that we can handle these more valuable cards. It takes longer to grade them, more risk. That's the second reason. I totally get people don't like being charged more, but at the end of the day, it's pretty reasonable.
All right, fair enough. I may not. We'll probably agree to disagree. I guess I just don't like paying more. But on one hand, it's nice too because it's telling you, hey, your card's more valuable than you might have thought. So I get it, but it's a question I had to ask.
That's fine.
And yep. We're seeing, one of the things that PSA could always hang their hat on was the PSA registry, to be able to look and get that population report. You lead that in the space. Kudos to you. You weren't there, but I went to the Hall of Fame party at the National. Just very well done. I spoke about that on my show. Just very well organized. Yeah, you got a gentleman I know real well as part of your company now,
Jamie
and Chris Carlin, who I think's one of the the good guys that we have in the hobby, and it's going to be, probably already is, obviously an asset to collectors. And he came to our table and he sat down and got his notepad out and said, "Hey guys, what can we do better?" And I only had a couple of things, but the one thing, is that registry, right? For the set registry. I'd love this. So I told this to Chris and I said, Chris, I'd love to see like almost a separate price for especially with some of the sizes of these sets, right? They could be set,
Yeah, it's good.
600-700 cards. Now you can put policies in place so someone doesn't take advantage of a system. So in other words, if someone wanted to grade a whole 1958 top set, I'm just throwing stuff off the top of my head, and they have the whole set and they just want to get them all graded, you know, whatever that price point is, where you guys can still be profitable but can be kind of consumer friendly to that person that owns that set. $6 7 a card, whatever. And they, in a case like that, and he liked the idea. I know he wrote it down. I joked with him that if it goes in place, he has to call it the Newman rule. We're just that's my humor, and I've known him long enough. Anything along those lines. Now, I also know you don't want someone, and I wouldn't want that to happen, right? Someone kind of say they're doing something for the set registry, and all you're seeing is them sending like
Yeah.
Manuel Clemente, Hank Aaron, and sort of taking advantage of
Oh,
that.
we'd
But in
upcharge
the
you though on those.
yeah, but in a situation where like, hey, this is heavy towards the set, you're getting, you know, Del Ennis along with Mickey Mantle. This isn't someone necessarily just sending in all the superstars. Any, maybe not tomorrow, but any thought to maybe
Yeah.
making that where it's a little more cost feasible for that person?
Yeah, we actually, this is on our list. I'm glad you brought it up. We have this on the, like, probably near the top of the list for things we'd like to do the set registry. We have an issue right now. It's just a technical one where the online submission center, the online submission center doesn't talk to the set registry. It's our problem, not your problem. But where, if you load up the online submission center, it's unaware of what sets you have and which cards you're missing. So in a perfect world, you'd pull up the online submission center, and it would say, hey, John, you've got, 25 sets you're building. You're missing these 1,000 cards. Any of those 1,000 cards, that list is right there, and it's a cheaper price. That's where we want to get. We just have to have the software engineering team connect those two systems of ours, so we could actually offer, discounted rates to set registry members. That's the reason. So, I mean, it's something we'd love to do. Getting back to our values, I mean, being obsessed with collectors, set registry members truly are the lifeblood of PSA. That's top of the list of people we think about, customers we think about and want to build features for. So, yeah, glad you brought it up.
Yeah, and it really came from attending that event. That was my first time
Yeah.
attending that event, and you did a great job of recognizing those folks that are ranked on that. Great meal. You allowed enough time for everyone to eat, and just the slide presentation. It was just well organized, like start to finish. It didn't feel like rushed, like some of the other events that I attended at the National. It was just well done, and I just thought, man, the registry is you're recognizing these folks that are on it, that are participating on, and I just think there'd be probably so many more people that could get onto that registry list. Even myself, I have some smaller 60, 80 card sets, let's say, like some of the oddball stuff that I would love to send in as like a whole set.
Yes.
Then that's the other thing. Like if someone's sending in like the set's complete, where they're not really sort of trying to take advantage of the system. Like we're getting
That's
this
what I say.
whole
The
set.
systems have to talk to each other so that when you're creating a submission, it knows and limits your discount to the cards that are set registry eligible. That's the vision for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to say, hear you say that it's on that on the list, not only on the list, but you mentioned even on the top of the list. Coming into this role, was there one thing at the top of your mind like that, one obviously it's you have more than one thing that you want to do, but was there one that was really at the top of the list when you first came in? Was it as simple as, hey, let's try to get caught up, or was it something else?
Grow the grading team as much as possible. Grow the overall, as I mentioned, all those steps. Get capacity to 50,000 plus cards a day, which at the time and still today seems like the right number for us. Knock on wood. That was number one. So as a collector, I had simple things like you know, a good example is like I want the date a card's graded in the cert lookups. Like when you type in a cert, you can see when the card was graded. PSA's never done that. We still haven't done it. It's harder to do than I thought it would be. Because a lot of we go back, data goes back 30 years. A lot of it's missing. Like we know generally when it was graded, but we couldn't say like on May 25th, 1996, for example. So yeah, I would say those things. What's another good example? Oh, new holders. So we've worked on. I don't have any right near me, but like we've worked on new pack holders, which are awesome. We've got some innovation. I don't want to be too specific, but we're actually innovating on our all the acronyms won't mean anything. But internally we have a holder. Here, like our standard holder. When I got there, this card, back in the day, like there's a lot of movement and, it didn't seem as secure as some other companies, but I preferred PSA. I just wish the case was better, more secure, especially for condition sensitive 90s cards. So we've got a pretty big, we've been working on it for like a year and a half, new holder. It's not going to look to the outward eye. It's not going to look that different, and there will be some differences, but it's a lot of upgrades as far as card protection, security, reducing potential damage during the sealing process, which unfortunately can happen, harder to tamper with and counterfeit externally, and higher quality UV protection, all sorts of stuff. So that's coming in December. I'd say when I got there, it was like, hey, I would love to see a new holder be like top of the list. So yeah, I think in like the next month, we're going to have some stuff out in the wild on that.
Okay, cool. I got to ask you, obviously you were a collector before your role at PSA. How has your collecting habits or what you collect or how you do it changed since you've gotten there, or has it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I mean, I still obsess over 90s basketball. I'm doing probably more sets than I ever was before. Like I'm doing all these random, like this is a good example, like 2008 Topps Chrome Gold refractors in basketball. Like you can buy commons for like $5, right? Like 90s, that's not, most commons of these rare 90 sets are hundreds of dollars. So I'm doing these kind of like, more modern sets, like 2002 finest gold refractors. Again, commons are $1, $2, $3. I love that. Like the values never really mattered to me, and I found myself doing more sets lately. I probably have like 100 plus sets active right now, maybe more. According to the set registry, it's 160, but I've kind of stopped carrying probably about 60 of them because they're either too hard to accomplish or whatever. I've gotten more into wax. I've always been into wax and unopened box collecting, but I've gotten you can't really see, but well, if I tilt my screen maybe, but like I've got tons of boxes, like thousands probably. But it's all I basically recreated my office to look like the card shop that I would go to as a kid. So
that's cool.
Yeah, that's probably accelerated in the last year or two, but nothing to do with PSA. It's just I don't know, just that's as I've kind of gotten a lot of the cards I always wanted. It's my next. Oh, and then I've started collecting photos. Never did that before, so that's cool, I think.
Yeah. I've seen you post some of like your wax acquisitions.
Yeah.
I have not on par with you. I'm not comparing apples to oranges. I have some sealed wax as well, and I always get asked if I post a picture of it, like, how do you not open that stuff, John?
Yeah.
And I just like willpower. I guess I'll pose the same question I get to you, Nat, is how do you not like get tempted just to say, hey, I'm gonna, it's a rainy day, I'm just gonna rip through these. And
yeah, I just got this 2000 football authentic. I mean, honestly, I had someone come in and install glass with locks and like the keys. Like it takes energy to like unlock it, and like, and I'm not very tall, and like most of them are pretty high up. So like, I that's kind of the way. And then all my packs are graded in PSA, and like I don't want to. It's really hard. Yeah, you can do it obviously, but like cracking them out of those holders is annoying. But yeah, I just try not to. I mean, I used to. I mean, honestly, I've done so much wax breaking, whatever you call it, that like to know better. Like I haven't pulled any. I mean, I pulled some stuff, but
well, I'm glad you said that, Nat, because I've always said on this show, when I get posed that question with
Yeah.
my sealed product, I hate to say it like this, but it's true, right?
Yeah.
It's almost worth more sealed than once I open it. And yeah, I've opened it like you just said. I've opened enough through the years, kind of it's like Pavlov's experiment.
Yeah. Yeah.
You learn the hard way until you finally, you keep walking down the alley and get whacked over the head. You'll stop walking down the alley.
Let me show you some photos. I don't know your listeners
Sure.
can see. Like that's an original Bobby Jones, the golfer.
Yeah, that's cool.
Like that's pretty cool. And then
Yeah.
this is super cool. This is I collect LeBron. A lot of people
Yeah.
recognize this, but that's the original photograph that was used on his EX rookie card 2003.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
that's cool just to have like, images that were used on cards. I think that's a really important. Unfortunately, there's just not that many of like things like that. Like it's not super. That one's more accessible, but like you go back to vintage baseball. There's 2 or 3 version copies. That's it. Like it's not like cards where there's thousands in different grades. But anyway, that's some of the stuff I'm collecting.
We've seen sort of the explosion or the rise of tickets and
Yeah.
the grading of tickets. Is that something of interest to you, or something you've dabbled in, or not necessarily? And talk about PSAs. Not all the graders will grade tickets, but you guys do. Kind of speak any personal interest on your personal collecting side, and as CEO PSA with tickets.
Yeah, I don't have any baseball tickets or basketball. I've tried to bid and win on certain debut tickets from Michael Jordan, Jackie Robinson, Mickey Mantle, folks like that. But I do collect. I'll show you Masters tickets, badges, I should say. So like here's like series badges. So I have one from every year, which I think that's cool. It's like a set, it's like from 1934 to present, get one from every year. It's hard, by the way.
Yeah.
But so I do collect tickets, but more in the badges and in golf, and not just Masters, but like US Amateur, or like in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
That stuff. But I think it's a huge area. We have a big emphasis on it internally. We're actually hiring more authenticators, putting more investment into ticket grading. Not just with sports, but we're seeing a lot of submissions for music, which is super cool, and other things. Like you've probably seen Darren Ravel, and like he's got a lot of like interesting, Titanic tickets, and and Lincoln was shot theater tickets, like that kind of stuff. So it's a big area. I mean, it's small for PSA on as a total, but single digit percentages of our total grading business, but probably one of the fastest growing, alongside pack grading, on open pack grading.
Yeah. And when you think of tickets, Nat, I could think when I was younger, right? You just throw it out, you put it in your pocket, it gets all crumpled up. Sometimes you don't even take it out of your pocket, right? It goes in the wash, and then it gets thrown out. And I think they're sort of, and you can't compare them to cards. They're separate entities, and they come out, they're formulated in different ways. But you can make an argument with tickets, especially older ones. They're kind of scarce and
They're
harder.
very rare.
People didn't keep that stuff. People didn't even keep baseball cards
No,
back then. They threw them around and put them in bike spokes. So you definitely know the tickets were just getting thrown out after the game, or washed in the laundry and that sort of thing. So I think it's, I'm a Jackie Robinson guy, and I too have sort of tried to search for some tickets. Obviously not the debut game. That's not in my budget.
Yeah, I mean those things went like 5 times what I was expecting. Yeah.
But even to find like a regular season game, you're seeing these prices sort of steadily increase, and I think people are sort of getting smart to realize like there's just probably not a lot of these left that exist. And
I'm a big Pearl Jam fan. I saved my tickets from their recent tour. I'm going to get them graded. I mean, there's a lot of interest on that stuff, and it resembles cards. I agree. Like as far as scarcity.
Yeah, and someone asked me that, for the 2 cents, Mike's me like, hey, what's the next thing, John, in your opinion, that like is sort of got more ceiling? And I really didn't think that long. It kind of just I just see
Tickets.
tickets.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just see tickets was one of the first things that
I agree.
I could
Yeah,
think of.
yeah,
And so I look like you said, I look for certain ones, and but they're tricky.
there.
They're
Yeah,
either
I
hard to find, and when you find them, they're out of reach budget
totally.
wise. So
Yeah,
it's tricky, but it's fun. It's fun to search for and regardless.
yep, I agree.
So we've seen the landscape of the hobby, and it's in the process with Fanatics going to be taking over. Three of the four major sports with the licensing. Kind of your thoughts as a collector. You've collected when we had a lot more brands and companies. Um, I'm a Brooklyn kid. I mentioned that to you before so I'm Tops was like everything growing up in Brooklyn. And so when that news first broke, it sort of it set me reeling a little bit. It was a little bit a shock. Obviously, it's not new news anymore, and I've kind of it is what it is. I'm interested to see where Fanatics goes and what different spins and fresh eyes they can do. But as from a collector's perspective, like your feelings on sort of the landscape of the hobby sort of going in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, I'm optimistic. I mean, I think change is good generally. Um, I'm a little bummed that I as a raging capitalist, competition is good for consumers, and as a collector, I love the golden era of card collecting. To me, was the late '90s, early 2000s. Um, we saw what happened in the '80s with junk wax and overproduction, and I'm a little worried we're there right now. I've talked about it before. Like, it's not just Fanatics. I think it's all the companies are printing. Printing maybe got a little. I mean, look, a lot of companies, even PSA, like we all enjoyed an incredibly high surge of demand during COVID, and it's easy to be intoxicated by that and think that will last forever. And I don't know if every company has responded the same way. I think about us, making sure we're not growing too fast and that sort of thing. We're a little different. Our demand is purely based on the cards people send us, where the card companies, it's the opposite. It's they're the ones distributing the cards, so they're the ones printing it, and they're the water that and the dam release, if you will. And a lot of us, like PSA, are downstream. But you just look at Prism as an example. You look at like Top Series, um, Topps Update. Like they're base cards are worthless now. And so I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. My gut tells me we've entered a speculation period of breaking, where people are just chasing the big card and literally the rest is garbage. And I again, it's just different. I think change is generally good. As a pure collector, like I don't open a ton of wax anymore, like the new stuff, because I don't pull anything at this point, and I can't follow the million parallels, and it's just it just feels it feels like change is needed. And so I'm optimistic that Fanatics can bring some kind of standards or normalcy to the hobby. I don't think the Panini, I like Panini products. I mean, I open Flawless and Prism and all the stuff I have historically. Basically mainly, a basketball collector. I think we need another rookie class, like we did in 09 or 19 or 18, like with Luka or Zion or Ja Morant. But
Yeah.
it just feels like we're in like a bit of a, like a lull a little bit on the card side, on the meaning like the new stuff coming out. So
Yeah, good point. I agree pretty much for the most part. Even walking around the national, and not that I'm looking through garbage, but like the garbage cans are open, you just see like people throwing away base cards, and they're just sitting right on the top there. And if you watch a break, sometimes the breaker's going right through those real quick and just looking for
it's just
that.
the new world order, or the new way of things. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm old, so I'm sort of the old man on the porch. It hits me a certain way. My first pack was the '79 Tops baseball pack, and I was just trading my buddies. They wanted the gum, and I wanted their cards, and so base cards will always have a place in my heart, regardless of what current conditions dictate. And so, but again, things evolve, things change, and
I think,
you
yeah.
know,
I mean, we every industry changes and evolves, and I think Fanatics is thinking about it the right way. I know the team. I mean, they're super smart, and I think it's a good thing. Like I said, I think I'm optimistic about it. But as a collector, like I said, I've been a bit bummed in the last year or two with kind of where the design and with the
yeah,
um, quantity of production, like that kind of stuff is, and the odds of pulling things, like where all that's gone. But I get it. I mean, more people entered the hobby. They got to print more cards. It's a unless you want boxes to be $100,000 each, you got to have more boxes, and then you got to fill those boxes with something. I totally understand it. Like
yeah.
they have a real challenge too, just like we did with how to scale grading. So
Yeah, I know you're. You can correct me if I'm wrong. There, I know you're a big Topps Chrome basketball guy. From, your thoughts on that. That returning in a
oh, I
sense.
mean, that's the most exciting thing ever to me. Is well, the most exciting thing ever would be somehow Upper Deck and Fanatics would would marry or strike a deal where they could bring Metal and EX and all those Fleer Skybox sets to back for basketball. I mean, it's cool they're doing it for hockey and non-licensed basketball and stuff, but it's just not the same. They need
Yeah,
it for they need to bring back PMGs with actual logos of basketball players. And but yeah, Topps Chrome is awesome. That's the most exciting part of the to me as a collector of the Fanatics thing is and seeing Topps Finest again, hopefully for basketball. You know, I mean, there's so many other things I would like to see with cards. Probably Metal basketball being number one, but I don't know. That's probably nostalgic for me. Like maybe some things aren't like the sequels of things often aren't as good as the original. But that said, Exquisite would be pretty awesome to have back. In basketball. I mean, National Treasures and Flawless are cool, but Exquisite's awesome. Or was. Who knows what it would look like when you brought it back. But like I said, there's Topps Chrome would be great. I can't wait for basketball.
so I know you said you don't open much wax. Now with that reincarnation, if you will that change your stance as far as ripping some wax? Will you kind of cross that line?
What would be a bummer is if you open Topps Chrome and there's 45 parallels and half the box is veterans who haven't played a game in 20 years. That's the part. And with redemptions and sticker autos, like you're seeing where I'm going with this, and non-game worn jerseys, and I've got a lot of bones to pick with, which again I like try and restrain myself, but as a collector, that kind of stuff. And I get that they've had to do these things, during COVID with demand surge and supply chain issues, but since you asked, like, with Topps Chrome coming out, hopefully with basketball one day, returning, those are the things. Like, if you can, and again, maybe I'm the old guy too, being like, I wish Topps Chrome was just how it was, and whenever it ended, '09 or starting back all in the mid '90s, like maybe it's not the right thing just to have one simple refractor and a gold, But maybe
Yeah.
kids these days love 50 different zebra parallels and camo, but for me, I would like it to just be kind of a pure like easier to understand and consume concept, and do away with sticker autos and redemptions and random jersey patches that that don't have a lot of value or meaning. So, but I mean, just the base rookie cards of like whatever his name is, the French guy, like if they
Yeah.
were able to get that out when that unicorn comes out, into the NBA, like that'll be really cool.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, these products return and their spin on it, right? What they do,
Yeah,
how much do
change is
they
good.
lean on? Yeah, how much do they lean on the past, or do they just take it in a completely different direction? You said some of the team, with Fanatics. I'm sure elsewhere too. Do you know well enough to say, hey, as a collector, like forget what my role is here at Collectors? I want to, can you make suggestions? Do they listen?
Oh yeah,
I
no, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm optimistic. They're very in tune. Like they care. They know that this is at the end of the day cardboard with, you know, pictures of athletes on them. Like they know that it's something very fragile that, you know, it's on them to protect and grow. And they know it starts with collectors, and they let, you know, I'm not, you know, I'm probably a squeaky wheel, but like they probably have a million other people who are, you know, just as passionate as I am about it. So, and I know they're listening to those people. It's, like I said, we're all businesses at the end of the day. So, you know, you always have to be optimistic in general. Like life's not worth living if you're not, right? But,
Yeah.
you know, as collectors, we all have to keep them honest, PSA honest, you know, all of our businesses, you know, our dollars will speak, right? And, you know, if restocks at Target aren't met with people actually buying the product, then, you know, then they'll pivot. And, you know, they know that it starts with the collector for sure. So,
Yeah, no doubt. They're like you said, there's smart people in those companies, and there's smart people kind of telling them what they'd like to see, or with the hobby's best interest
yeah.
at heart. Hopefully, enough people listen, and like I tell everyone on on the podcast, like there's no utopia. There's going to be mistakes here and there. That's
Yeah.
just par for the course. But I always say give them a year or two kind of to see, before you kind of
Yeah.
cast your verdict. Give them time to put their stamp on things and what direction they want to go. It's definitely going to be, like you said, it's going to be interesting to say the least, and it's going to be fun to watch and see where the hobby goes next. I appreciate you making some time for
Yeah,
the
of
show,
course.
Nat. I know you're a very busy man. I always give the guest at the end, give out all your socials, where people can see what you're doing. PSA collectors, no rush. Take your time. Get all that information out there.
Yeah. You want me to say it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So psacard.com is the website for PSA. I would in particular check out Set Registry and follow us on Instagram PSA, but then also mine is Turner _cards for
Yep,
Instagram.
yep. And you can see all that unopened wax that Nat resists the temptation to open, and I enjoy looking at it because it brings me back to that time period, right? You can't really go back, but it's probably the next best thing.
Yeah, no doubt. If you enjoy
Yeah.
opening bricked wax, you know, buy some name.
Yeah, upper deck hockey too.
Oh, really?
From the upper deck and all that upper deck stuff now is just you can free it, but it
Yeah,
definitely
too bad.
comes out in that fashion. So, well, Nat, continued success. I appreciate you coming on.
No problem.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.